Hey guys, tonight we begin with something just a little surreal. You're floating, drifting really on a quiet sheet of water. Not a river, not quite a lake. Around you, tiny islands rise from the mist like gentle green rafts. They look as though they've been grown, not built, woven into place by some ancient hand. Each one bursts with colour and life, marigolds in full bloom amaranth, in delicate crimson spikes, corn stalks towering like sentinels of the soilless deep. There's no sound of traffic, no smell of smog, just birdsong, the soft slosh of a paddle, and a breeze scented faintly with earth and damp reeds. This is not a dream. You're in Xochimilco, and it's the 15th century. Oh, and you probably won't survive this. Not because it's deadly, not really, but because you're soft. You've got clean shoes and a favourite coffee shop. You think composting is noble and washing vegetables counts as touching dirt. Here there are no grocery stores, no fertilisers with cute labels, no raised beds framed with reclaimed wood, just water-mud willow branches and an ancient system of survival that made the impossible grow. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see who's lying in bed listening to history in Boston, Bangkok or Berlin. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The boat beneath you rocks gently. You're lying back tucked in a hollowed canoe, watching the sky darken from blue to lavender. Around you, rows of what look like miniature islands stretch across the shallow lake. The Aztecs called them chinampas, floating gardens. They're not actually floating like lily pads, but they're not anchored to bedrock either. Imagine rectangles of layered reeds and mud held in place by ancient engineering and a lot of hope. They're not farms, they're miracles with roots. This is how the Aztecs fed a civilization of over 200,000 people in a city built quite literally on water. When the Mexica first arrived in the Valley of Mexico, they didn't land on fertile plains or sun-kissed valleys. No, they got a swamp, a vast briny, soggy lake bed that no one else really wanted. And what did they do? They shrugged and said, fine, we'll just build land. You pass a plot filled with chili plants, neat rows of little green torches growing from what looks like a floating patch of jungle. Another field has flowers, tall and bright, grown not just for beauty but for ceremony. Because in this world, every plant has a purpose. Corn isn't just food, it's sacred. Squash isn't just dinner, it's medicine, container symbol and sometimes emergency sun hat. Marigolds. They're a bridge to the ancestors. The man steering your canoe barely says a word. His eyes are sharp, his hands calloused, his paddle steady. He hums occasionally, a tune older than memory. You don't understand the words, but the rhythm feels right. Each stroke pushes you forward, through a watery maze, past leaning willows whose roots bite deep into the lake bed, holding the chinampas in place, like stakes pinning a tent to soft ground. Everything here is quiet but alive. Under the surface, fish dart between reeds. Dragonflies dance above the water. Frogs chirp like tiny percussionists in the background. And then there's the soil, or lack thereof. Chinampas were built by stacking layers, reed mats, lake sediment, decaying vegetation. The Aztecs dug canals between each plot, throwing the muck from the bottom onto the beds. With time, roots grew through the layers, anchoring them in place. Willow trees called ahuejotes were planted at the corners. Their roots grew deep, their trunks tall, acting like living fence posts. You trail a hand in the water, it's warm, silky, and when you lift it back out, it smells like life, rich, old, slightly sweet. This lake has fed people for centuries, and it still remembers. Not all historians agree on how much food these chinampas really produced. Some say they were the heart of Aztec agriculture. Others argue they were supplementary more for vegetables and flowers than staple crops. There's debate over just how many square miles they covered, or how long it took to build one. But no one denies their brilliance. This was precision farming before tractors, organic agriculture before influencers. The old man stops paddling for a moment. He points. Ahead you see a woman kneeling at the edge of a chinampa, hands buried wrist-deep in black mud. She's planting amaranth tiny crimson shoots spaced with quiet precision. A baby sleeps on her back wrapped in cloth. A dog lounges nearby. The scene is peaceful, but don't mistake it for ease. This life is constant work. The chinampa is always hungry. The reeds rot. The water level shifts. The wind tears at your crops. And still the garden must grow. You have no choice. Because in Tenochtitlan, the imperial city rising not far away, people are counting on you. Warriors, priests, scribes, builders, they all need food. And the emperor expects offerings. Corn beans, squash herbs. Clean, neat, abundant. No excuses. You drift past a chinampa bristling with tall maize, each stalk topped with silky tassels, the husks fat and ready to harvest. The smell makes you hungry, green-sweet like rain-soaked earth and roasted kernels. Your mouth waters, but this is not your field. You didn't dig this plot or haul the silt. You just watch it pass dreamlike. A heron lands nearby with the indifference of a creature that owns the place. It stares at you. You stare back. Somewhere in the distance, a flute starts to play a thin, haunting melody that slips across the water like smoke. Maybe it's real. Maybe it's memory. Tenochtitlan rises in the distance, barely visible in the evening light. But here on the edge of the city, everything slows, everything floats, even time. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The paddle strokes continue. You breathe in the scent of mud, maize and marigolds. This is how the Aztecs built paradise, one armload of muck at a time, and you're floating in it. You wake to the sound of a bird calling a sharp, echoing cry that feels both distant and intimately close. The air is cooler now, damp. Your clothes cling slightly with mist. The boat nudges against a small pier made of bundled reeds. Your guide gestures for you to step out. The chinampa beneath your feet is spongy but solid, like walking on an old mattress that somehow learned discipline. Welcome to land. Sort of. Because this isn't land in the usual sense. There's no bedrock beneath you. Just centuries of compost layered carefully by hands like yours, except yours are still soft. These hands, the ones that made this plot they hauled mud from the lake's bottom, chopped reeds by the hundred and bundled them until they formed something stable, something sacred. This chinampa is yours now, just for a while. Around you, the Valley of Mexico stretches like a silver basin. In every direction, mountains rim the horizon, snow-capped blue in the morning haze like sleeping gods, and between them the Great Lakes shimmer. There used to be 5 of them: Texcoco, Xochimilco, Chalco, Zumpango, and Xaltocan. Connected by canals, causeways and dreams, Tenochtitlan rises out of Texcoco's shallows, a city built from stone and song. But here where you stand now, the lake is gentler, fertile, and as stubborn as the people who coaxed crops from its marshy skin. You get your first real look at the layout. Each chinampa is long and narrow, maybe 30 feet wide and a few 100 feet long. They're separated by narrow canals, just wide enough for a canoe. Some plots are rectangular, others more organic, shaped by necessity, or the contours of old willows. Together they look like a patchwork quilt sewn directly onto the lake. The reason is simple: flat space is hard to find here. The Valley of Mexico was a water world hemmed in by mountains and floods. Farming on dry ground wasn't an option. So the Mexica innovated not with metal tools or wheels, but with mud water and the quiet patience of someone who has no choice. You walk the edge of the chinampa, careful not to slip. The boundaries are marked with logs, reed bundles, or just thick mats of roots. On either side, the water laps softly. It's not clean exactly, but it's alive, teeming. Dragonflies skip across the surface. Tadpoles squiggle in the shallows. The whole system hums. And yes, the Aztecs planned it that way. These weren't haphazard gardens. They were precision built. The first step, drive stakes into the lake bed. Then weave a wall of reeds. Then fill it with lake muck. Then more reeds, more muck. Let it settle. Plant willows at the corners. Let the roots knit it all together. Do this 100 times, 1,000. Soon you have an empire of floating farms. Historians still debate just how long this took to evolve. Some say chinampas predate the Aztecs inherited from earlier cultures like the Xochimilca or the Toltecs. Others argue that the Mexica adapted and refined them, expanding the system to support a bustling capital. What's agreed on is this: by the time of Moctezuma II, chinampas produced an astonishing amount of food, possibly up to 7 crops per year per field. That's not farming, that's agricultural alchemy. You kneel beside a small planting area. The soil is dark, rich. It smells like wet leaves and generations. You scoop a handful, it's soft but structured. Not like dry dust or sandy loam, but more like chocolate cake before it's baked. This isn't dirt from the ground. It's the floor of the lake dredged up and transformed into life. Someone calls out nearby, an older woman, sun-worn and barefoot, beckoning you. She hands you a tool, a long pointed stick. No iron, no steel, just polished wood. You're going to dig planting holes the old-fashioned way, one poke at a time. She shows you how to angle the stick, how deep to go, how far apart to space the seeds. You mimic her. Your stick sinks into the soil with a satisfying thwop. Your first hole, then a second. By the third, your shoulders are already complaining. She smiles and pats your back, soft hands, she says, and you laugh. It's true. Around you others are already working, quietly, efficiently. Everyone has a role. Some plant, some water, some haul compost in baskets woven from maguey fibre. There's no shouting, no machines, just rhythm. You realise it's the same rhythm your guide paddled by, the same tempo the canoe swayed to. It's the pulse of the chinampa itself. You start to notice the layers, literal and social. The surface is green, abundant, serene. But beneath it, work, politics, ritual. There are rules about who gets which plot, who owes tribute, who can grow what. Nobles own the best fields, commoners rent theirs, monks tend sacred gardens where every plant has a purpose. Even the emperor has chinampas maintained by tribute farmers, who send offerings to the palace baskets of maize beans, chilies, squash blossoms and herbs for the royal cooks. And always there's the calendar. Not the kind you hang on the fridge, the kind written in stars. The Mexica calendar was split into 2 cycles, the Tonalpohualli, a 260-day sacred count, and the Xiuhpohualli, a 365-day solar year. Together they dictated when to plant, when to harvest, when to offer blood or flowers or song to the gods of agriculture. Because farming wasn't just labour, it was devotion. You wipe sweat from your brow. It's not even midday and already the sun has burned through the haze. Your back aches, your knees are muddy. A mosquito buzzes dangerously close, and yet something about it feels right. Grounded. Even floating this place roots you. You hear children laughing down the canal, a woman chanting softly to her plants, the sound of a flute, a splash, a frog. This is what it means to build a city on water, not with bridges and cement, but with mud willows and the endless will to survive. You sit down at the edge of the plot, feet dangling above the water. Beneath the surface, fish weave between submerged roots. The woman beside you offers a tamale wrapped in green leaf and still steaming. You take it. It's warm, spicy, familiar somehow. You eat, you breathe, you watch the reeds sway. And for a moment it's easy to believe you belong here. The sun climbs higher, painting the lake's surface with a liquid sheen that flickers between bronze and blinding white. Your eyes squint beneath the wide brim of a borrowed straw hat. The canoe rocks slightly beneath your feet as it glides past narrow earthen islands. But this time you're not just here to admire them. This time you're going to build one. Or try to anyway. Welcome to your first real day of labour. Not planting, not harvesting, but creation. From nothing. You're going to help build a chinampa, one of those floating gardens that shouldn't make sense and yet somehow do. A farm with no land, a miracle held together by roots and reeds, by muscle and mud, and by the unshakable belief that if you just keep piling dirt in the right place, something beautiful will grow. The first step, naturally, is to find a spot. Your guide, a man who speaks little but gestures with authority, scans the lake's shallows with the tip of his pole. He taps the bottom, listening for depth, mumbles something in Nahuatl, nods once. This is the place. Now you begin. 4 long stakes of ahuejote, the sacred willow, are shoved into the lake bed at rough corners. You watch as the workers, older and far more efficient, drive the poles down using heavy stones. Each blow is rhythmic, satisfying. You try it, gripping your own post with stiff fingers and swinging the stone with more enthusiasm than aim. It lands crooked. The others don't say anything, but one man walks over and silently straightens it for you. You nod, embarrassed but grateful. Once the frame is set, the weaving begins. You bundle reeds, tulle and carrizo into tight sheaves. They're not soft, but they're flexible, and when tied and layered right, they form a basket wall that's both strong and porous. These reed walls won't hold water back. They're not dams. They'll contain the muck. Let it settle. Let it breathe. Which brings you to the real challenge, the muck itself. You've never seen soil like this before. It's not dry and crumbly like the bags at the store. It's alive. Dark as wet coffee grounds, dense as clay, slippery as a banana peel on a rainy day. The lake bed is full of it, nutrient-rich sediment that Aztec farmers dredged with paddles, baskets, and sheer determination. You join in. A canoe is loaded with wooden baskets. You paddle to a designated spot, tip a basket into the shallows, and scoop up the black gold. It clings to the wood, sucks at your fingers, smells like a swamp and dinner at the same time. You pile it high, paddle back, dump it in, and again, and again. It is exhausting. This process, repeated dozens of times, fills the reed enclosure inch by inch. You create layers, one of muck, then one of rotted vegetation, then another of muck. Someone tosses in shredded maize stalks and groundwater lily roots. These add fibre, air pockets, life. As the mound rises above the waterline, you finally begin to see it. A rectangle of dark earth. Not stable, not pretty, but real. This is your chinampa. Kind of. It's not truly yours, of course. It belongs to the community. But you had a hand in its creation. That counts. At least to you. A woman named Ixchel, who's been quietly working beside you all morning, offers you a cloth to wipe your hands. She laughs softly at your mud-smeared face, then turns to place 4 willow saplings, one at each corner of the plot. You ask why. She points at the saplings, then draws a square in the air with her finger. Root. Anchor, she says. Protect. These ahuejotes aren't just decoration. Their roots will grow deep, binding the whole structure together. Their branches will provide shade. Their presence will signal permanence. A chinampa without ahuejotes is like a roof without beams. You sit back, chest-heaving, legs shaking. It's early afternoon, and already you've burned more calories than you probably do in a week. Your arms are jelly. Your back is one tight knot of regret. But your chinampa stands. Or floats. Or both. It's not done, of course. It will take weeks to settle. Months before the roots lock everything in place. Maybe longer. You won't be here to see it mature, but it will continue without you. Because that's how these gardens work. They outlive the gardener. Historians still argue about the origins of the chinampa system. Some claim the Aztecs inherited it from earlier groups like the Xochimilca or Toltecs. Others suggest the Mexica simply perfected a technique that had already existed for centuries. What everyone agrees on is that chinampas allowed for near-constant cultivation. Some could yield up to 7 harvests a year. That's not a garden. That's a machine made of mud. And it wasn't just for maize. Chinampas grew beans, squash tomatoes, chilies, amaranth herbs, even flowers. Bright marigolds for the temples, medicinal plants for healers, plants for dyes, for ceremonies, for trade. The fields may have been humble, but the output was complex, strategic, sacred. You lie back on the reed mat laid near the new chinampa's edge. The sun filters through the willow leaves, dappling your face in green-gold light. Nearby children chase frogs along the canal, shrieking with joy. A man whistles while sharpening a wooden tool, and over it all the distant sound of drums, a slow pulsing rhythm from the city beyond the water. Tenochtitlan. You can just make out the city's silhouette. Gleaming temples, wide causeways, canoes crisscrossing like ants on a mirror. The floating gardens feed that city, quietly, constantly, without ceremony. The farmers here won't be remembered in stone. No one will carve their names into pyramids or sing songs about their mud-smeared days. But they will be remembered in a different way. In the bellies they fill, in the flowers they send to temples, in the fields that stay green even when the sun is cruel. This is the genius of the chinampa. Not just that it floats, but that it endures. As the sky begins to shift into late afternoon haze, you sip from a gourd of atole, a warm, thick drink made from cornmeal and cinnamon. It soothes your throat, coats your stomach, and makes your eyelids heavy. You've built something today. Something that might still exist tomorrow. And in this watery, floating world that's no small thing, the morning mist is still thick on the canals as you rise. Dew clings to the reeds, and the faint sound of water lapping against the chinampa's sides sounds like slow applause. The soreness from yesterday's labour hasn't left. It's settled in like an old friend who's overstayed their welcome. Your arms are heavy, your thighs complain with every step, but today the work is different. Today you plant. Your newly built chinampa looks more like a muddy raft than a garden, but give it time. There's a quiet order in the chaos. The soil you helped layer with lake muck and wilted reeds is already firm underfoot, and you can see where someone's already etched faint lines to guide your planting. Today, your teacher is a different kind of guide, Malinali. She's a farmer, yes, but also something else, a steward of knowledge. She doesn't speak often, but when she does it feels like the words matter. She carries a reed basket filled with small wrapped bundles seeds cradled in dried corn husks like tiny sacred relics. She crouches low and motions for you to do the same. Milpa, she says. Milpa isn't just a planting method. It's a philosophy, a life model, an ecosystem built not on dominance but cooperation. She unwraps the first bundle maize. Fat golden kernels, each one slightly different in shade, like the spectrum of a sunset compressed into grain. Corn, the queen of the field, comes first. She plants 3 seeds together in a gentle triangle. Not in rows, never in rows. Circles, trios, spirals, these are the sacred geometries of the field. Next comes beans. Smaller, darker, curled slightly like sleeping commas. You place them next to the corn mounds, 2 per stalk. Malinali explains that they'll climb grateful vines using the sturdy cornstalks, like ladders to the sky. In return, they'll feed the soil, adding nitrogen to keep the maize thriving. Friends, these two. Partners, sister plants. Then comes squash. The seeds are flat, pale and warm from being held. You press them into the soil around the base of the corn and beans. Squash doesn't grow up. It grows out wide leaves spreading low and thick, acting like a living mulch protecting the soil from drying and the crops from weeds. A quiet guardian. This Malinali says with a satisfied nod is a 3 sisters planting. But here in the Aztec chinampa system, it's only the beginning. She reaches into another bundle. More seeds, some unfamiliar. Amaranth with its blood-red leaves and seeds packed with protein. A superfood before superfoods were hashtags. Chili peppers so small and unassuming you almost laugh until she warns you not to touch your eyes. You believe her. Then come the herbs epazote for digestion, tlalnapa for wounds, Mexican marigold, both spice and spirit offering. These aren't just flavourings, they're medicine, ritual, culture. You're not just planting food, you're planting a worldview. You follow her motions, dig, place, press, pat, again and again. The soil is soft, damp, it welcomes the seeds like old friends. Soon your hands take over almost on instinct. The pain in your back fades into a low hum. You fall into a rhythm one not unlike a lullaby. Poke, drop, press. Breathe. Repeat. The chinampa begins to change under your hands. What was once bare earth becomes a map of relationships, not rows. Corn mounds mark the peaks. Beans curl and wrap around invisible spires. Squash radiates outward like green suns. Herbs and flowers dot the border's little sentinels of scent and colour. A boy paddles by in a canoe loaded with duckweed and feathers. He scoops water with a gourd and pours it carefully over each mound. You mimic him drawing water from the canal. It's warm, thick with algae and smells like wet grass and moss. But this is liquid gold. No pipes, no sprinklers. Just water hand-carried or guided through channels feeding the fields as it always has. You glance at the surrounding chinampas. Some are older, thick with growth. Others still young, their saplings tied to sticks for support. No two look the same. Some grow mostly flowers, bright red cempasúchil used for ceremonies and markets. Others focus on herbs or gourds. You realise suddenly that no two gardens were meant to be the same. There's no monoculture here, no standardised system. Just 1,000 variations on the same idea: grow what you need, share what you can, respect what grows. Historians still discuss how the Aztecs chose their crop rotations. Some argue they followed strict seasonal rules based on the Tonalpohualli, the sacred 260-day calendar. Others suggest the chinampas followed more practical observational methods, watching soil, sun, rainfall. In truth, both are probably right. The Aztecs didn't separate science from spirit. For them, planting corn wasn't just agricultural, it was religious. You pause for a moment and feel the breeze shift. It carries the scent of smoke, distant cooking fires, and something sweet, roasted agave maybe. The sun has begun to arc toward afternoon, and your shirt is soaked with sweat. Malinali hands you a piece of nixtamalized maize cake, dense, warm, lightly salted. You eat it slowly, savouring the grainy softness and the faint crunch of embedded seeds. As you chew, she points to the sky. High above, a hawk circles. They come when we plant, she says, to bless or to steal. You don't know which she means, but the hawk doesn't dive. It just circles, watches, then glides toward the city. When planting is done, you walk the borders tracing your work. The ahuejote saplings at the corners are budding now, their tiny leaves unfolding like paper scrolls. Soon they'll shade the garden, anchor it further. Their roots will braid through mud, matting everything together in a dense living net. You sit at the edge of your plot legs, dangling hands still covered in soil. The garden isn't much to look at yet, just mounds, seeds, hope. But you can already see it. In your mind's eye, it bursts to life, corn taller than you, beans like jungle ropes, squash vines spilling into the canal blossoms, curling open at dawn like whispered secrets. This is not just agriculture, it is choreography, symbiosis, a floating symphony of root and stem, and now you are part of it. The morning arrives quietly veiled in a soft mist that drifts across the canals like a second skin. You stir beneath a woven reed blanket, your muscles slow to respond, your hands still caked with the memory of yesterday's soil. As the fog curls around the willow trunks, you sit up on the edge of the chinampa, stretching toward the sky with a groan that's halfway between ancient and comedic. The garden waits quiet, glistening expectant. Today your task is humble, dirty, and vital fertilizing. If the planting was poetry, today is the punctuation. The hard stops, the commas, the messy syntax of life and rot and return. You're about to learn that the Aztecs didn't just grow crops. They cultivated balance. Nothing was wasted, not a feather, not a fish head, not a single duck dropping. Malinali's already up. You spot her across the canal, waist deep in muck, scooping something into a large flat basket, with a nonchalance that suggests she doesn't mind what she's handling. You walk over and are immediately struck by the smell. It hits you like a warm handshake from a swamp. She offers you a basket and a grin. Today she says you feed the earth. You try to ignore what's sloshing under your fingernails. First the basics, the Aztecs used what they had, which meant everything. Duck droppings, fish guts, decomposed plant matter, and even human waste in some circumstances though. That's reserved for very specific composting pits. And today, thankfully, you're starting with ducks. The ducks are everywhere. clumsy round, endlessly noisy. They wander freely between chinampas, foraging through the reeds, eating weeds and insects, and generously leaving behind little gifts. You follow a group of children as they sweep the droppings into baskets, with broad maguey brushes giggling with each splash and squawk. One child tosses a feather at your face. You blink. It sticks. Next comes the mixing. You help Malinali create a slurry of duck droppings and fine lake sediment called tlali scraped from canal bottoms. The result is a smooth, heavy muck that oozes like chocolate pudding gone morally wrong. You scoop it into bowls made from hollowed-out gourds, careful not to spill on your bare feet. The smell clings to your skin, your clothes, your very soul. But you press on. Smells bad, Malinali says, because it's waking up. She shows you where to pour it around the bases of maize and amaranth, never directly on the plants themselves. You ladle the mix into shallow furrows. The soil absorbs it quickly. The air around each mound grows richer, heavier, alive, then crushed fish bones. Someone brings a basket of them from the market, gleaming white shards collected from kitchen refuse. You sprinkle them like seasoning along the rows. Calcium for strong stalks, minerals for flowering. Nothing here is wasted, not even bones. Later you help build a compost trench. It's a shallow groove near the edge of the chinampa lined with reed mats. Into it you and Malinali lay a green waste from yesterday's weeding, crushed maize husks, decomposing squash vines, and a generous helping of duckweed. Then come the scraps left over tamale wrappings, fish heads, overripe fruits. Everything is stacked in alternating layers like a pie no one wants to eat but everyone depends on. 3 weeks, Malinali says. Then we dig it up, feed again. Historians still discuss whether Aztec farmers understood microbial decomposition the way modern science does. Likely not. But they understood cycles. They knew what worked. The lake gave the people used, and the waste returned to the water where it transformed into growth again. Fertility wasn't just soil deep, it was spiritual. You break for lunch sitting beneath the ahuehote trees you planted days ago. The branches are already leafing out, stretching thin green fingers over your garden. Malinali hands you a small tamale wrapped in a corn husk. Inside, mashed black beans, squash blossom, and a few strips of cactus. It's earthy, nutty, unapologetically real. You eat slowly, watching a young man across the canal stir something in a clay pot. He's making liquid fertilizer, a bubbling broth of compost tea that smells like feet, but turns maize fields into jungles. A dog sleeps beside him, ears twitching occasionally. Overhead, the hawk from the other day returns circling silently. You look back at your plot. The corn is taller, not dramatically so, but enough. The squash leaves are growing wider, like fans unfurling after a long nap. The beans are wrapping around their stalks like dancers mid-embrace. You didn't notice the change happen. It just did. After lunch, you join another group hauling water hyacinth from the canal, a floating plant considered both nuisance and blessing. It clogs waterways, yes, but decomposes fast and enriches compost piles with shocking speed. The plants are slippery, their roots trailing in long green-black beards. You toss them into the compost trench. They land with a wet squelch. You notice how no one wastes time here arguing with nature. The Aztecs didn't fight the lake. They invited it in. Let it be part of the process. The soil on your hands was once duckweed. The corn in your lunch was once waste. The line between trash and treasure has always been thinner than we think. By sunset, your chinampa smells like potential, like algae and sweat and something that might one day become bread. You sit back, exhausted but deeply satisfied. The ducks are quieter now, clustered near the water's edge, heads tucked beneath wings. The sky's streaked with red and indigo. Fireflies blink on in slow waves. You trail your fingers through the muck beside a bean sprout and realise something strange. You no longer care about the smell. Not because it's gone, it hasn't, but because the garden has started to speak to you not in words but in leaf and root and ripple, in the way everything returns, the way death becomes food, the way filth becomes bloom. Tomorrow you'll learn how to water a garden that already floats, but tonight the soil sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, and you perhaps sleep a little closer to the earth than you ever have before. The air at dawn is thick with dew and whisper quiet except for the gentle gurgle of canal water brushing against the edges of your chinampa. It's cool now, but the sun will be unforgiving by midday. You stir from your blanket of woven agave fibres, wipe sleep from your eyes, and stretch back, cracking like brittle maize stalks. The garden is waking with you, and today it needs water. You'd think surrounded by water on every side, that watering crops on a chinampa would be simple, effortless even. But it turns out watering a floating field takes more care than a dry one. Too much, and the roots drown. Too little, and the lake's shimmer is no use to the thirsty. Water is everywhere, yes. But only a gardener who knows how to move it with precision, patience and respect can make it truly nourish. Your teacher today is a man named Coyotl. Slender, older, his face deeply lined like parched bark, and his arms lean with a wiry strength you've come to recognize as a signature of chinampa workers. He doesn't speak much, but he hands you a long-handled gourd ladle, a tikomate, and gestures to the canal. "Let's begin," he says simply. He demonstrates the first scoop, dipping the tikomate into the canal and pouring a modest stream onto the base of a maize mound. He doesn't flood the soil, he lets it drink. Each mound receives a brief offering, a single pour. Then he moves on. The rhythm is slow, ceremonial almost. Scoop, step, pour, pause, listen. You copy him. Your first pour is too much, the water splashes and pools soaking the leaves. Coyotl raises an eyebrow. "Roots," he says. "Not leaves. Leaves complain. Roots decide." You try again. Better. The chinampa is alive beneath your feet. Not just the plants, but the soil, the water, the hundreds of unseen workers just below the surface. Worms aerating, microbes feasting. Even the frogs croaking nearby play their part hunting pests that threaten your crops. Coyotl tells you the canals aren't just moats, they're partners, extensions of the land. The Aztecs knew this long before the science caught up. Their entire farming system was designed around water, not as a problem to control but a force to collaborate with. The canals weren't just accidental leftovers from digging soil. They were irrigation arteries, temperature regulators, even transport routes. With a single canoe and a skilled hand, a farmer could visit 10 plots in a morning watering, as he paddled, checking seedlings, ferrying produce back to market. Historians still marvel at the chinampa system's ingenuity. It wasn't just productive, it was adaptable. In dry spells, water could be scooped directly from the canal. In floods, the raised beds kept roots safe above the tide. In extreme heat, the moisture from the surrounding water cooled the plants and slowed evaporation. As you continue watering, you notice subtle things you hadn't seen before. The maize plants lean toward the canal's edge, not because they're top-heavy, but because that side gets morning light first. The squash vines curl along the canal like snakes basking near water. The beans, they're rebels stretching toward any available support, whether it's a cornstalk or your bare leg. Coyotl points to the soil. "Look," he says. "Dark means drink. Light means wait. You crouch. Indeed, some patches glisten like coffee grounds. Others crumble slightly in need of another ladle. You begin to feel the land's moods not in words, but in texture, in smell, in sound. The soil tells you when it's happy. The roots tell you when they're full. To keep water from evaporating too quickly, Coyotl teaches you about duckweed, the little green plant that floats on the surface of the canal like a living blanket. Together you scoop it up with woven nets and spread it gently around your squash mounds. It forms a soft mulch, locking in moisture and adding nutrients as it decays. Too much Coyotl warns and it chokes the water, but just enough it's shade for the soil. You spread it carefully. A thin green rug around each plant. Within minutes, the ground below feels cooler. He then shows you a more advanced technique, capillary irrigation. Near the base of a thirsty tomato sprout, he pokes a narrow hole in the soil and inserts a reed straw thin hollow. One end reaches into the canal, the other down into the root zone. Through this natural straw, water is drawn slowly, gently, without flooding. The plant drinks when it's ready. Coyotl calls it the lazy roots trick. No hoses, no plastic, just physics and patience. Around midday you rest beneath an ahuejote tree sipping aguamiel, the cool sap of the maguey plant. Slightly sweet, faintly earthy, it's a drink fit for tired arms. Coyotl smokes a narrow reed pipe, watching a group of children laughing in a canoe, tossing splashes of water at each other with cupped hands. They're not just playing, he says, they're learning. Water doesn't wait, he adds, it teaches the moment. After the break, you help inspect other chinampas along the canal. One woman grows only flowers, cempasúchil, xochitl, wild roses and mariposa lilies. She waters not with a gourd, but with her hands, cupping and pouring. Her fingers move with the delicacy of prayer. Too fast, she says, and flowers faint. At another plot, a man with a hawk feather necklace shows you his tomato trick. He pours small amounts of warm water collected in clay pots left in the sun. Cold water shocks, he tells you. Warm water speaks. Each farmer, each gardener has their method, but all are rooted in observation, humility and trust. The land gives yes, but only when the water is asked gently. You return to your chinampa late in the afternoon. The corn leaves rustle softly in the breeze. The squash vines are fuller, the beans tighter. You sit at the edge, your feet in the canal, watching dragonflies hover like tiny helicopters over the water's surface. Today you've learned the most delicate part of farming restraint. To let the water move slowly, to give only what's needed, to listen. As the sky turns rose-coloured and the frogs begin their evening choir, you dip your tecomate one last time. Scoop, step, pour. The soil darkens. The roots drink. And your chinampa breathes a little easier. The first thing you notice this morning is the smell. Not unpleasant exactly, but strong, earthy, thick. Like someone slow-cooked the lake overnight and then stirred it with a compost paddle. It clings to your clothes, settles in your nose and nestles into your brain before your eyes are even fully open. You sit up on your reed mat, blink away the haze of sleep, and stretch toward a sky just beginning to lighten over the horizon. Mist creeps low across the canals. The frogs are still croaking softly and ducks are already waddling across the chinampa, leaving tiny purposeful trails of footprints in the dew-dark soil. Today is feeding day, but not for you. Your job is to feed the land. Malinali appears with 2 large reed baskets and a glint in her eye that means one thing: this is going to get messy. She doesn't waste time. She tips over the first basket and a thick, glistening mass flops onto a tarp like a sleeping animal made of sludge. The smell intensifies wet algae, fish guts, sweet rot, and something that might be fermented maize or duck bile. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Fertilizer, she says cheerfully. Real food. Not that powder in bags. She hands you a scoop made from half a gourd. It's already stained black with use. Your first thought is to hold your breath, but it doesn't work. The smell is here to stay. Instead, you breathe through your mouth, crouch beside the mix and dig in. The fertilizer is a combination of things you've come to recognize in your short time on the Chinampa Lake sediment: rich and dark, crushed fish bones, duck droppings, decomposed plants, and somehow tiny powdered shells. Everything that didn't make it onto someone's plate has been given a second life. It's all gone back to the earth as it always does. You begin spreading the mixture around the base of the maize and squash plants. A thick, even coat, careful not to touch the stems. Coyotl, passing by with his own basket, nods in approval. The roots, he says, that's where they drink. Don't feed the leaves, feed the soul. It's slow work, but methodical, peaceful even. Each scoop you lay down is part of a conversation between you and the earth. Between life and decay, between what fed you yesterday and what will feed you tomorrow. The ducks quack lazily in the background. One waddles over and pecks at your ankle. You ignore him. The soil, now darker and stickier from the organic slurry, seems to pulse with quiet gratitude. You run your fingers through it and feel the heat of fermentation, the warmth of living matter breaking itself down to rise again as root and fruit. Historians have long debated how much the Aztecs really knew about soil science. Did they understand nitrogen microbes? The role of calcium? Probably not in the modern sense, but they watched. They remembered. They passed knowledge down like recipes. When this rots that grows, they would say. When the water turns green, the maize grows tall. It was empirical, instinctive, and surprisingly sophisticated. You break mid-morning to help a group of children haul duckweed from the canal, its floating mats thick as a shaggy carpet. This bright green plant isn't just shade for fish. It's an excellent soil additive, high in nitrogen, fast to decompose and cooling to the roots. You and the children laugh as it clings to your arms and face like confetti made by frogs. Back on your plot, you blend the duckweed into the compost layer. The garden begins to smell more balanced, less like fish death, more like tea left out too long. The difference is subtle, but it matters. Malinali returns with a bowl of warm pulque, a fermented agave drink cloudy as morning fog and faintly sour. You sip it slowly seated beneath a young willow, its leaves trembling above like green streamers. You're feeding the soil, she says, but don't forget to feed yourself too, fair enough. Lunch is a bundle of maize tortillas filled with squash blossoms and black beans, handed to you wrapped in corn husks. You eat slowly, watching the lake shimmer, and the clouds drift past like slow white boats. In the afternoon, you assist Coyotl in digging a compost trench near the chinampas edge. It's a groove barely 2 feet deep, lined with broken stalks and layers of spoiled fruit. He tosses in chopped water lilies, crushed axaya cattle, insects, even a few burned tortillas from yesterday's fire. You wrinkle your nose, but Coyotl grins. The worse it smells, he says, the better it grows. You bury the trench under fresh reeds and pat it down. We come back in a moon, he adds. By then the garden will have eaten it. As the sun starts to drop low, you finish your final round of feeding. Each plant now sits like a guest at a feast root surrounded by rich black soil, their leaves quivering with hidden excitement. You can almost hear them whispering thanks in the breeze. You sit again at the water's edge, legs, muddy arms, tired eyes, squinting into the pink-orange reflection of the sky. This wasn't glamorous work, it wasn't planting or harvesting. It was shoveling slop, stirring sludge, fighting off curious ducks. But somehow it feels like the most honest day you've had here. You think of your own life, your own food, how easily it appears on store shelves, wrapped in clean plastic and priced by the pound. You never considered what it takes to give back to the land, what it costs to nourish the thing that nourishes you. Now you know. Tomorrow, they say, is market day. You'll paddle through the canals at sunrise carrying the fruits of your labour bean, squash amaranth, maybe even flowers to the great city beyond the reeds. But tonight you rest beside the soil you fed and listen to it hum. The sun hasn't fully lifted above the horizon when you begin tying the last bundle of amaranth with a strip of dried maguey fibre. Mist still drapes itself across the canals like a soft blanket, and the only sounds you hear are the distant splash of a paddle, the low trill of waking birds, and the occasional grunt from someone struggling to balance a basket in their canoe. Today is market day. Your back aches slightly as you bend over to finish knotting the bundle. It's strange how quickly your body has learned to feel useful pain. Pain from motion, from labour, from effort that goes somewhere, from work that quite literally bears fruit. Your chinampa, now over a week old, is no longer just a plot of floating dirt. It's alive. And today, it gives. You look down at the goods you've prepared, bundles of fresh amaranth, tight and purple like crushed velvet. Handfuls of green beans still dangling from twisted vines. A heap of squash blossoms, delicate golden cups that look like they were folded by hand from sunlight. A few maize cobs, smaller than the ones at the supermarket back home, but glowing with a kind of quiet pride. Beside them, a cluster of epazote, a pungent herb used for everything from stews to stomach aches. Malinali appears beside you, balancing a wide, flat-bottomed canoe already half filled with baskets. Her arms are stronger than yours. Her expression is businesslike. But she lets a smile slip when she sees your pile. Not bad, she says. Enough to trade. maybe even enough to boast. She gestures and together you begin to load the canoe. It's a quiet job. You arrange things with care beans in woven bowls, herbs wrapped in maize husks to keep them cool, flowers nestled between rows of squash to prevent bruising. Every space in the canoe becomes valuable, every leaf matters. When everything is secured, Malinali hands you a paddle. Hers is longer worn smooth from years of use. Yours is still a little stiff, but you've learned enough these past days. You nod, step into the canoe and push off. The canal greets you like an old friend. Water laps softly against the hull as you move through the narrow channels. Willows arch overhead, dipping their tips like priests at a blessing. Other canoes join you as the sun finally breaches the mountains, each one carrying baskets, bundles, pots, even animals. One man steers with one hand and balances live turkey in the other. A woman with 4 children hums quietly while sorting chilies into bowls. The waterway becomes a slow-moving procession. You realise you're not heading toward just any market. You're going to Tlatelolco, the beating heart of Aztec commerce. It was once the largest market in all of Mesoamerica. Some say 20,000 people came each day. Others claim 40,000. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're going with your canoe full of hope and beans and squash blossoms. Malinali glides ahead with practiced ease. You follow. The canals widen. The floating gardens recede. Stone buildings appear, and the sound of city life swells. Drums calls footsteps on damp stone. Tenochtitlan rises out of the lake, half dream, half monument. Pyramids touch the sky. Markets buzz and bridges bustle, with bodies moving like water through causeways. At the docking area, you tie the canoe alongside dozens of others. Porters help unload. Children run between stalls. A pair of women argue loudly over the price of dried fish, while a vendor plays a reed flute to attract buyers to his pyramid of roasted cacao beans. You and Malinali set up your stall beneath a fabric canopy, stretched between 2 poles. No sign, no brand. Just the food and your face. That's enough. The first customers arrive quickly. A man with a woven shoulder bag wants amaranth. He offers a roll of cotton cloth dyed in cochineal red, so vibrant it looks alive. Malinali inspects the cloth, pinches the weave, nods. The trade is made. A woman in a jade necklace stops next. She fingers your squash blossoms, then lays out salt cakes shaped like flowers. Another fair deal. Soon your table is busy. You trade beans for obsidian shards, ipazote for smoked fish chilies, for vanilla pods, and flowers for beeswax candles. There's no currency, only value. And value is determined not just by need, but by respect. No one haggles, no one cheats. Everything here is both business and ritual. As the morning stretches into late day, you take turns with Malinali exploring the other stalls. You find baskets of turquoise beads, stacks of clay cookware, bundles of dried mushrooms, and slabs of resin incense wrapped in bark. You see a woman selling painted gourds, each one telling a story with lines and dots that look like constellations. You buy one with a handful of fresh herbs. You also find the food stalls. Oh, the smells! Roasted maize, honey cakes, chili stews, tamales steamed in banana leaves. One man hands you a hot cup of zocolatl, a bitter, spicy drink made from ground cacao, water and chili. It kicks you awake. You don't need coffee anymore. Back at your stall, a young girl gives you a carved wooden comb in exchange for a bunch of marigolds. You smile as she runs off flowers bobbing in her arms. Later, a trader from a far-off province stops by. His skin is sunburned, and he wears a headdress of feathers you don't recognise. He points at your maze, then offers a small obsidian mirror, dark, polished, and just slightly cracked at the edge. You take it. Not because it's valuable, but because it feels like it's meant for you. By early afternoon, your stall is nearly empty. You have no more beans, no more squash. Just a few herbs left, and one slightly wilted flower you're saving for yourself. Malinali pats your shoulder. You've earned your place, she says. You pack your traded items, cloth salt, obsidian feathers, a painted gourd, vanilla pods, honey cacao, mushrooms. Nothing flashy, but all precious. You load your canoe, it feels lighter, but your chest feels full. The paddle home is quieter, the canals shimmer in the late light. You pass other farmers, other traders, other stories. You recognise some, you nod to them. Back on your chinampa, you unload what you earned. You didn't sell food, you exchange care for tools, labour for beauty, plants for possibility. As the sun sets, you sit beside your willow tree, the obsidian mirror resting in your lap, the mirror's surface reflecting skyleaf and your own tired smile. You fed the city, and in return, it fed you. You wake before the sky has turned from black to blue. The chill of the lake air seeps through your woven mat, and the willow branches above you sway gently in the breeze. You rise slowly, muscles aching but familiar now with the rhythm of work. There's a soft quiet across the chinampa, broken only by the distant rustling of ducks and the faint splash of paddles in the water. Today feels different, not because of the work, but because of the purpose. The sun, though not yet risen, is close. You stand stretching out the stiffness and walk barefoot across your floating garden. The soil is cool and damp beneath your feet, soft with last night's moisture. Beans curl around maize stalks like sleepy snakes. Squash blossoms still hold their breath, not yet open to the light. You pass your fingers across the leaves, feeling their waxy skins and the way they bend to touch, like nodding in agreement. You've come to a new phase in your time on the chinampa. The harvesting, the watering, the feeding, they all taught you how to work. But now comes something subtler. Today you begin to learn how to read. Not books, not glyphs, but time. Malinali joins you near the edge of the garden, carrying with her a roll of bark paper. She lays it across a flat rock and begins unrolling it with reverence. Upon it are painted symbols, spirals, circles, stars, frogs, maize cobs and jaguars. This, she says, is the Tonalpohualli. You look at the paper as if it were a map, but it's not. It's a calendar, a sacred one. A 260-day cycle the Aztecs used to align their agriculture with the cosmos. Each day, she explains, is ruled by a different tonally, a combination of day sign and number. These guide what should be done and what should be left alone. Some days are good for planting, others for harvesting. Some are meant for rest. Some are days when the land sleeps and must not be disturbed. Like people, she says, the land gets tired too. You study the signs, an ear of maize beside a monkey, a frog beside a symbol for wind. It's poetic in a way that makes more sense than dates on a grid. You realise this isn't a matter of superstition, it's observation. The Aztecs had no telescopes, but they had time, patience and memory. Over generations they watched, and they remembered. Next, Coyotl leads you to the northeast corner of the chinampa, where a single upright pole casts a thin shadow in the soft light. He's carved notches in the earth, marking where that shadow falls throughout the year. This is our sunstick, he says, but it also belongs to the maize. You crouch and watch the shadow creep. In silence, he shows you how each notch corresponds to a season. The length of the shadow at noon tells you when the rains will come, when the planting must begin, when the squash needs more shade, when the beans will climb too far if not trained early. You realise watching this simple stick that you're not measuring hours, you're reading the pulse of the earth. Historians still debate how exact Aztec astronomy was. Some say they were priests cloaked in ritual, more concerned with gods than science. Others argue they were proto-engineers mapping lunar cycles with uncanny precision. But here on the chinampa, it doesn't feel like either. It feels like intuition honed into knowledge. Later that morning, a group of children arrive laughing and wet from swimming. They carry a wooden disc carved with phases of the moon. You watch them align it with the sky, then stick reeds into the soil in a spiral. For squash, one girl says. So the fruit knows how to grow. You blink. The moon tells it that she shrugs. Everything listens to something. That phrase stays with you. You begin to walk your chinampa, slowly trying to listen. You notice how the maize leaves bend when the sun hits them early, how the soil in the east corner stays warmer, how the flowers turn slightly toward the water after noon. You hadn't seen these things before, Or perhaps you had, but hadn't understood what they meant. Malinali returns in the afternoon with a bowl of copal resin and a small clay burner. She lights it, and the sweet, thick smoke rolls upward into the still sky. The scent is sharp, but calming earth and fire and memory combined. She hands you a bundle of dried herbs and instructs you to walk the edge of your chinampa, wafting the smoke over your plants. It's not just for blessing, she says. It tells the worms to settle, tells the insects to wait, tells the gods you're paying attention. So you walk slowly, sending smoke into the beans and the maize and the squash. You feel ridiculous at first, then grounded, then grateful. You pause at one corner and trace a mark in the soil, the same place the shadow touched yesterday. It's moved. Slightly. But enough. You mark it again. Another small step in your silent conversation with the sky. By late afternoon, the air turns gold and you sit with Coyotl beneath a willow. He explains how the Aztecs combined two calendars, the Tonalpohualli, sacred and mystical, and the Xupahualli, the 365-day solar calendar used for agriculture. The intersection of these two formed a 52-year cycle, marking time in a way that reminded people that all things, even time itself, renew. You stare at your garden now basking in this amber light and see it differently, not just as a place of labour, but as a clock, a temple, a teacher. You walk the rows slowly, now eyes half-closed, hands grazing the leaves. You hear the frogs, the breeze, the soil shifting beneath your step. You hear your plants too, not in words, but in the slow lean of a stalk, the curl of a tendril, the dryness of the topsoil near your chilies. Each movement is a note, and your job is to listen for the melody. You crouch near your newest maize sprout, still no taller than your forearm, and whisper without meaning to, "What do you need?" The wind stirs. You take that as your answer. As night falls, the lake reflects the stars like a mirror broken into perfect shards. You sit with your feet in the water, a painted gourd of warm atoll in your hands, the taste of cinnamon and toasted maize filling your mouth. Across the canal, someone is playing a flute. The notes drift like fireflies. The moon is full. You notice how it makes the bean leaves shine, how the canal glows. You remember the children, the spiral, the moon chart, and for the first time you understand without asking. This isn't just a garden, it's a calendar that grows, and you are learning to tell time by watching it bloom. By the time the first light slips over the eastern ridgeline, your eyes are already open. You're not sure if you ever truly fell asleep. The frogs were unusually loud last night, and there was something in the air, something electric and waiting. You felt it in your chest, in your fingertips, in the cool breath of mist that wrapped around your chinampa like a whisper before dawn. Something is shifting. The garden feels different. It's not just the quiet, which is deeper than usual. It's not the wind, which hovers just outside hearing. It's something in the way the maize leaves seem to rustle before you even move. The squash blossoms stay closed longer. The canal water lies still heavy and full of secrets. You rise and walk the edge of your chinampa barefoot, as always feeling for messages in the mud. The soil is spongy today, not dry, not soaked, just holding, waiting. You crouch to touch the base of a maize stalk and notice a faint curl at the tip of one leaf. You run your fingers along it. It crackles softly. Malinali approaches her reed sandals, nearly silent on the path. She carries a long staff and a bundle of dried herbs. Her expression is unreadable. She doesn't greet you with her usual joke. Instead, she points to the eastern sky. Too red, she says, and no birds. You look. She's right. The sky's a brilliant wash of crimson and orange, as though someone spilled blood into the sunrise. It's beautiful, but in the same way, fire is beautiful from across a field. And where there should be flocks of birds dipping and calling through the trees, there is nothing. You don't ask questions. You wait. Coyotl joins you both shortly after paddling slowly from the far canal. He brings news. 3 chinampas near the southern ridge dry, he says. The water's dropping. Not from the sky, but from underneath. A quiet spreads over your little gathering like a fog. There isn't just drought. It's something subtler. something older. The lake, it seems, is pulling back, not retreating completely, but testing you. You begin preparations, not out of panic, not because of orders, but because that's what people here do. When the world shifts, they adapt. The floating garden isn't immune to change, but it's built for it. You start by inspecting every part of your plot. The maize is holding. The beans are curling tighter. The squash, always dramatic, shows the first signs of protest. You dig shallow trenches around your key crops, not to water them directly, but to capture dew condensation runoff, anything the chinampa might offer. You weave fresh reed mats and place them beneath the squash vines to keep the roots cool. You redistribute mulch, thicker now, to shade the soil and hold in what little moisture remains. You're not alone. Across the canals, others are doing the same. Malinali coordinates a crew of young paddlers who ferry duckweed and sediment from the deeper canals to feed struggling plots. Coyotl and a team of elders take readings at key points measuring sediment levels, shadow lengths, soil temperature, even frog calls. Yes, frog calls. They go silent before the water gets too warm, Coyotl explains, or too sick. You start paying more attention to them too. In the afternoon, the sun rises high and unforgiving. You shift to shade work, weaving new fencing from willow branches, helping a neighbour reinforce the edge of their plot. As you work, you hear whispers, not gossip, but stories. Of the last time this happened, of the signs that were missed, of the one chinampa that kept producing through it all because its keeper had listened to the birds and planted early. Historians might call this folklore, but out here it's data collected through centuries told by mouth stored in muscle memory. You pause for a drink and sit under the largest ahuejote tree, letting its long shadows stretch across your legs. The canal is quiet. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. You close your eyes and focus on your breathing, slowing it, matching it to the rhythm of the garden. You don't pray, but you listen. By sunset, the air has cooled slightly, but the tension hasn't. The frogs begin calling again, not frantically, but insistently. A kind of rolling chant that echoes along the water like ripples. You take it as a sign. Tonight there's a ceremony, not planned, not formal, just a gathering. Canoes pulled, close fires lit, low offerings shared. A few elders bring instruments, a hollow drum, a reed flute. Someone passes around warm atoll thick with maize and honey. Malinali lights a bowl of kapil and the smoke rises in thin trails curling into the stars. You sit in silence and watch the flames reflect on the water. You think about everything the chinampa has given food, purpose, shelter, rhythm. You think about what happens if the lake dries further, if the rains don't come. Coyotl stands his voice low and steady. We don't beg the lake, he says. We remind it that we are listening. He throws a pinch of salt into the water. You follow, tossing in a few strands of squash blossom, a chipped obsidian shard from market, and a single bean, plump, dark, full of promise. Later you and Malinali return to your chinampa. You check the trenches, the plants, the mulch. Everything is holding, for now. You sit by the canal and dip your feet into the water. It's cooler than you expect. You talk, finally. Not about the drought, but about cycles. This has happened before, she says. It will happen again. And what if it gets worse, you ask? She looks at the stars. Then we grow smarter. You lie back and watch the sky. The stars are brighter tonight. The wind is slower. You listen to the frogs, to the rustle of maize, to the lap of water against your garden's edge. The chinampa has weathered worse than this, because it bends, because it breathes, because those who tend it do not command, they collaborate. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you will build shade covers from palm fronds. You will paddle further to bring better silt. You will adjust your planting schedule. You will stay in rhythm, because this isn't about avoiding change. It's about growing through it. By the time the first light slips over the eastern ridgeline, your eyes are already open. You're not sure if you ever truly fell asleep. The frogs were unusually loud last night, and there was something in the air, something electric and waiting. You felt it in your chest, in your fingertips, in the cool breath of mist that wrapped around your chinampa like a whisper before dawn. Something is shifting. The garden feels different. It's not just the quiet, which is deeper than usual. It's not the wind, which hovers just outside hearing. It's something in the way the maize leaves seem to rustle before you even move. The squash blossoms stay closed longer. The canal water lies still heavy and full of secrets. You rise and walk the edge of your chinampa barefoot as always, feeling for messages in the mud. The soil is spongy today, not dry, not soaked, just holding, waiting. You crouch to touch the base of a maize stalk and notice a faint curl at the tip of one leaf. You run your fingers along it. It crackles softly. Malinali approaches her reed sandals, nearly silent on the path. She carries a long staff and a bundle of dried herbs. Her expression is unreadable. She doesn't greet you with her usual joke. Instead, she points to the eastern sky. "Too red," she says, "and no birds." You look. She's right. The sky is a brilliant wash of crimson and orange, as though someone spilled blood into the sunrise. It's beautiful, but in the same way, fire is beautiful from across a field. And where there should be flocks of birds dipping and calling through the trees, there is nothing. You don't ask questions, you wait. Coyotl joins you both shortly after paddling slowly from the far canal. He brings news. 3 chinampas near the southern ridge dry, he says. The water's dropping. Not from the sky, but from underneath. A quiet spreads over your little gathering like a fog. This isn't just drought. It's something subtler, something older. The lake, it seems, is pulling back, not retreating completely, but testing you. You begin preparations, not out of panic, not because of orders, but because that's what people here do when the world shifts, they adapt. The floating garden isn't immune to change, but it's built for it. You start by inspecting every part of your plot. The maize is holding. The beans are curling tighter. The squash, always dramatic, shows the first signs of protest. You dig shallow trenches around your key crops, not to water them directly, but to capture dew condensation runoff, anything the chinampa might offer. You weave fresh reed mats and place them beneath the squash vines to keep the roots cool. You redistribute mulch, thicker now, to shade the soil, and hold in what little moisture remains. You're not alone. Across the canals, others are doing the same. Malinali coordinates a crew of young paddlers who ferry duckweed and sediment from the deeper canals to feed struggling plots. Coyotl and a team of elders take readings at key points, measuring sediment levels, shadow lengths, soil temperature, even frog calls. Yes, frog calls. They go silent before the water gets too warm, Coyotl explains. Or too sick. You start paying more attention to them too. In the afternoon, the sun rises high and unforgiving. You shift to shade work, weaving new fencing from willow branches, helping a neighbour reinforce the edge of their plot. As you work, you hear whispers, not gossip but stories, of the last time this happened, of the signs that were missed, of the one chinampa that kept producing through it all because its keeper had listened to the birds and planted early. Historians might call this folklore. But out here it's data collected through centuries told by mouth stored in muscle memory. You pause for a drink and sit under the largest ahuejote tree, letting its long shadows stretch across your legs. The canal is quiet. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. You close your eyes and focus on your breathing, slowing it, matching it to the rhythm of the garden. You don't pray, but you listen. By sunset, the air has cooled slightly, but the tension hasn't. The frogs begin calling again, not frantically, but insistently. Kind of rolling chant that echoes along the water like ripples. You take it as a sign. Tonight there's a ceremony, not planned, not formal, just a gathering canoes pulled close fires lit, low offerings shared. A few elders bring instruments, a hollowed drum, a reed flute. Someone passes around warm atole thick with maize and honey. Malinali lights a bowl of copal, and the smoke rises in thin trails curling into the stars. You sit in silence and watch the flames reflect on the water. You think about everything the chinampa has given food, purpose, shelter, rhythm. You think about what happens if the lake dries further, if the rains don't come. Coyotl stands his voice low and steady. We don't beg the lake, he says. We remind it that we are listening. He throws a pinch of salt into the water. You follow, tossing in a few strands of squash blossom, a chipped obsidian shard from market, and a single bean plump, dark, full of promise. Later you and Malinali return to your chinampa. You check the trenches, the plants, the mulch. Everything is holding, for now. You sit by the canal and dip your feet into the water. It's cooler than you expect. You talk finally. Not about the drought, but about cycles. This has happened before, she says. It will happen again. And what if it gets worse, you ask? She looks at the stars. Then we grow smarter. You lie back and watch the sky. The stars are brighter tonight. The wind is slower. You listen to the frogs, to the rustle of maize, to the lap of water against your garden's edge. The chinampa has weathered worse than this, because it bends, because it breathes, because those who tend it do not command, they collaborate. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you will build shade covers from palm fronds. You will paddle further to bring better silt. You will adjust your planting schedule. You will stay in rhythm, because this isn't about avoiding change, it's about growing through it. The air is thick with moisture when you wake. Not the heaviness of a coming storm or the choking kind before a drought, but a steady, rich dampness that clings to the skin like a blessing. It's a signal one you now know how to interpret. The garden is in its prime. The maize stalks, once only waist-high, now tower over you, their tassels golden and shaggy waving slightly in the morning breeze. The squash blossoms bloom with such reckless softness that bees do somersaults in their centres. The beans, greedy and joyous, have twined into everything, up corn stalks, across reed fences, even looping over the handles of your clay watering jar, like they want to pull it back into the soil. You stretch slowly beneath the willow, taking your time. There's no rush today. Not because there's less to do, but because this part of the season demands patience. The pace slows now, not out of fatigue, but because the garden tells you so. It is the season of ripening. Coyotl greets you near the canal with a quiet nod. He carries a reed basket filled with offerings, maize chili, a single obsidian blade wrapped in cotton. You know what this means. You've heard murmurs over the past few days. Tonight there will be a ceremony under the full moon. But today you prepare. Your morning work is gentle. You walk the chinampa like you're checking in on friends. You bend to inspect the undersides of squash leaves for pests. You run your fingers along the bean pods, pressing softly to feel how full the seeds have grown. You touch each maize stalk near the root, feeling its strength. Nothing wobbles, nothing wilts. This, you think, is what satisfaction looks like in green. You spend part of the morning harvesting only what the garden offers freely. A few chilies have dropped their skins wrinkled and rich. An amaranth stalk leans so far it's clearly asking to be cut. You take only what's ready. Not everything that could be taken. The rest stays, grows, waits. Malinali joins you midday. She carries 2 reed mats and a bundle of dried herbs tied with a string of maize silk. She doesn't speak for a while. She just sits beside you under the shade of an ahuehot and sips from a clay gourd filled with thick, warm chili atoll, a rich, spicy corn drink that smells like hearth and strength. Do you know why we offer during the full moon, she asks after a while. You shake your head. Because the moon is like the chinampa, she says. It changes, it grows, it disappears, but it always comes back. We offer to it not because we fear it, but because we respect its rhythm. You let that sit. Respect the rhythm. That's what the past weeks have been. Listening to the soil, adjusting your pace, reading leaves and sky. You haven't tamed the chinampa, you've joined it. That afternoon you help prepare for the ceremony. You paddle to a neighbour's chinampa to collect marigolds' bright orange bursts that look like tiny suns. You gather cacao pods from a family who lives closer to the market causeway. You trade 3 fresh bean bundles and a few words about the weather. No one keeps score. Everyone gives what they can. Back at your garden, you clean your tools with canal water and scrub your hands with ash and lime. Malinali tells you this is tradition. You don't bring the day's labour into the night's offering, she says. You come clean, empty, ready. As twilight falls, you prepare your own small bundle, a handful of amaranth seeds, a perfect red chile and a stone you found by the canal weeks ago round smooth and somehow warm in your hand. You tie them in a strip of worn agave fibre and place it in a small bowl. Canoes begin arriving just after sunset. Dozens, maybe more, lit with floating candles carrying bowls of maize baskets of herbs, clay flutes and silent people dressed in simple white. The procession is quiet, reverent. You paddle with Malinali and Coyotl to the ceremonial chinampa, a larger one rarely used now ringed with torches and lined with mats. In the centre is an altar built of earth and stone decorated with flowers, feathers and polished obsidian. People take their places in a wide circle. An elder begins to speak. His voice is low and steady like the current beneath the water. He speaks not of gods in the abstract, but of cycles, planting, growing, dying, returning. He talks about the maize god who sacrifices himself in every kernel, the bean that waits in darkness until its time, the water that gives without asking. Then the offerings begin. One by one, people approach the altar, place their bundles down and whisper a few words. Thanks, hopes, names of grandparents, prayers for children. When it's your turn, you step forward slowly, your feet bare on the cool soil. You kneel, place your bundle gently on the altar. The seeds, the chili, the stone. You don't speak at first. Then softly, thank you for teaching me how to listen. You bow your head and return to your mat. Music follows, not drums, not flutes, just voices. Low-layered humming that rises and falls like the wind. You close your eyes. The moon rises. Full. Perfect. It catches on the water and lights every face with silver. After a while, food is shared. Simple. Beautiful. Tamales steamed in pumpkin leaves, maize tortillas wrapped around wild greens, beans seasoned with chili and lime honey cakes crumbling sweet and soft. You eat beside your neighbours, your mentors, your fellow growers. No one speaks loudly. No one rushes. It is a meal of presence. Later, the elder leads a final circle, hands joined, eyes closed. He speaks of the water that holds you, of the soil that grows you, of the sky that watches you. And then silence. Long, unbroken. Until someone begins to laugh. Not loud, just a soft chuckle that spreads like sunlight, and then a child giggles. Another voice joins, and soon the circle becomes laughter and stories and songs sung badly but with joy. You paddle home under moonlight. The water is so still that your canoe seems to float on stars. You trail your fingers in the canal. Think of the maize back home, of the toad sleeping beneath the squash, of the bean vine now curled tightly around your watering jar like it doesn't want you to go. Back on your chinampa, you lie down beside the tallest stalk and watch the sky. You think about everything the gardener's taught you, how to move slowly, how to share without tallying, how to read a cloud's tone or a frog's silence. You came here not knowing what to expect, and now you can't imagine not waking to water, not digging with your hands, not tracing moon shadows across your maize rows. You didn't just grow food here, you grew belonging, and the chinampa, it grew you too. The night after the harvest moon ceremony feels different. The air is softer somehow, as if the lake itself is still exhaling the incense and laughter from the gathering. The stars blink slowly above, and the water reflects them back with perfect calm. You sleep deeply wrapped in the scent of earth and ash until the sun nudges you awake with warm fingers brushing your face. You rise slower than usual, not from exhaustion, but from stillness. Your body feels heavy in the way a well-fed field does, settled, rooted. Today Malinali tells you is not for planting or harvesting. Today is for remembering. Even the chinampa rests, she says, as she gently cuts a bundle of marigolds. So must you. But resting here doesn't mean doing nothing. It means reflecting. It means walking slowly. It means tracing the lines you've carved into this floating world, with your feet, with your tools, with your care. You begin your morning by cleaning, not out of necessity but out of reverence. You sweep away dry leaves and gather the wilted petals from the altar corner of your chinampa. You wash your gourd bowl in the canal and set it in the sun to dry. You fold the reed mat you slept on, brushing away the crumbs of yesterday's shared feast. The chinampa is quiet today, not sleepy but contemplative. Even the ducks seem subdued, paddling in loose figure eights, quacking only occasionally like they too remember the song sung beneath the moon. You decide to walk, not to the market, not toward any goal, just walk. You step from your chinampa into a canoe and paddle slowly along the narrow canals, gliding past other floating gardens now lush with life, their green rows glowing in the morning light. You pass chinampas blooming with cempasúchil, others heavy with ripening tomatoes, others fragrant with fresh-cut epizot and wormwood. Everyone is tending something, but not urgently, not competitively, just tending. At the first turn in the canal, you pass an elder sitting in a shaded nook, whittling a spoon from a willow branch. He looks up, smiles, and gestures to the spot beside him. You tie off the canoe and join him. He offers you a seat, then passes you a second piece of wood and a small carving blade. You take it without speaking and begin to work. The rhythm is slow, meditative. The shavings fall like thin ribbons into your lap. After a while he speaks. You remember things differently when your hands are busy. You nod. It's true. You remember your first week here when the mud was a mystery and the canal water made your stomach twist. You remember how foreign the soil felt beneath your nails, how lost you were amid the beans and maize and language, and you remember the moment it changed. Not all at once, but slowly. The first time a squash vine curled around your watering bowl like a hand reaching back. The first time the maize leaves whispered as you passed. The first time you noticed that the canal smelled different after a full moon. You finish the spoon. It's rough, uneven, and beautiful. The elder inspects it and nods. It'll get better with use, he says. Everything does. You thank him, leave your carving by his side, and paddle again. Your next stop is the small community garden plot near the ceremonial chinampa. Several children are there today, each tending a patch of their own. Some weed carefully. Others splash canal water onto squash vines with carved bowls. One girl hums while tying beans to a low trellis. You watch for a while, then offer to help. They hand you a reed basket filled with crushed maize husks and composted duckweed. Together you spread it in a thin layer over their shared herb garden. The soil is warm beneath your fingers, soft and rich like it's always just rained. The youngest child asks you why the water smells like flowers today. You pause, and then you realise he's right. The water does smell sweet. Not like flowers exactly, but like something alive and calm and clean. Maybe the chinampa is happy, you say. He grins and says, "It likes our singing." You stay longer than you intended, and by the time you return to your own garden, the sun is sliding down the sky. Coyotl is there waiting with a bowl of roasted amaranth and toasted cacao beans. He gestures for you to sit beside him under the willow. You do. You've learned much, he says. More than many. You nod, unsure what to say, but he isn't finished. There's one more thing. He hands you a folded piece of bark paper. Inside, a simple symbol drawn in soot and clay ink. A spiral tight and unbroken. You look up. It's the memory of your chinampa, he says. It grows inward, deep, then outward again. You trace the spiral with your fingertip. You've seen this shape before in the bean vines, in the way the maize unfurls in the moon's path across the water. It's the shape of growth, of return. You'll leave soon, he says. But this place doesn't end. You feel a lump rise in your throat. The thought of leaving feels wrong, but also maybe right. Because this chinampa has never been yours to keep, only yours to tend, to care for, to remember. You stand, brush the soil from your legs and walk one last loop of your plot. You touch each maize stalk, each squash blossom, each patch of herbs and rows of beans. You whisper thank you, not for what they've given, but for letting you give. That night you sit by the canal and eat the last of your tamales with coyotl and malinali. The stars shine high. The water glows silver. A toad hops across your foot and disappears into the shadows. Tomorrow you will begin preparing to leave, but tonight you're still here, in the garden, in the rhythm, in the spiral, and somehow you know you never really leave the chinampa, not if you carry its memory like seed in your hand. The next morning something has shifted, not in the soil, not in the sky, but in you. You wake early before even the ducks have stirred and the usual heaviness in your limbs is absent. You move with ease barefoot through the dew, weaving between the maize and beans like you've always belonged here, and perhaps now you do. Not because you were born to it, but because you stayed, listened, adapted. The garden hums with quiet life. The air is warm but forgiving, scented with fresh water, crushed herbs, and the faint sweetness of rotting squash blossoms. A smell you've come to associate not with decay but with transition. Nature's way of closing one loop to begin another. Today Malinali tells you is a day of celebration. A harvest celebration tied to the lunar calendar, timed not by a date on a modern planner, but by signs the colour of the maize tassels, the scent of the morning breeze, the behaviour of the frogs near the eastern canals. It's not a festival you'll find on any tourist brochure. There are no banners, no stages, no amplified music. Just people, water, earth, and memory. The preparations begin slowly. You help Malinali gather the harvest from your chinampa, not all of it, just what the plants have given freely. A handful of ripe tomatoes, a few bright red chilies, 3 ears of maize so perfectly formed they look sculpted. You collect a small bundle of amaranth, tie it with corn husk, and lay it atop a reed mat at the corner of your garden. An offering for those who can't join us, she explains. You ask her who she means, the ones who came before, she says, and the ones who will come after. You pause hand on a sunflower head heavy with seeds and let that settle in. You're no longer thinking in days or weeks. You're now thinking in seasons, in cycles, in roots and returns. As the sun rises higher, the air begins to carry voices, laughter, song, the slow rhythm of wooden paddles against water. From every direction, neighbours arrive by canoe, their boats piled high with fresh produce, flowers, clay bowls wrapped tamales and colourful woven cloths. Children sit perched among baskets, feet, swinging faces flushed with anticipation. You join the procession. Your canoe moves slowly through the water, your reed mat spread neatly across the middle, your offerings placed with care, maize beans, squash a bundle of marigolds from the garden's edge, and a bowl of agua miel collected fresh at dawn from the nearest maguey. The gathering place is a wide ceremonial chinampa near the centre of the canal system. It's larger than most, with space for dozens of mats shaded by willow trees that have been bent and trained to form natural arches. The effect is something like a cathedral green and gold and full of filtered light. You help set up. There are no formal assignments, but everyone seems to know what to do. Some unroll reed mats in a wide circle. Others build low platforms for food and offerings. Someone strings garlands of fresh flowers between 2 willow poles. You tie bundles of herbs with maize silk and hang them at the corners of the platform. The scent is dizzying basil epizot mint marigold. The elder who spoke at the last ceremony appears again this time wearing a mantle painted with maize and sun symbols. His voice is gravel and honey. He calls the gathering to stillness and the circle quiets. He speaks not of gods but of gratitude. For the rain that came, for the drought that passed, for the things that didn't grow, for the things that did. He speaks of listening, of offering, of humility in the face of nature. We plant, he says, but we do not control. We ask. And when the answer is yes, we give thanks. Then comes the sharing. Not a meal, not yet. First, the offerings. One by one, each person places their gifts on the central mat. No names are spoken, no explanations given. You place your bowl of agua miel and your bundle of maize, then step back. A child lays down a single flower. An old man places a bowl of tiny black seeds. Someone offers a carved gourd. Then silence. A long, thoughtful silence broken only by bird song and the creak of a passing canoe. Then the music begins, a slow beat on a clay drum, a wooden flute, a soft chant that builds and fades like waves lapping at the chinampas' edge. Some sway in time, others close their eyes. One woman dances slowly, arms stretched like the branches above. Then the feast. It's not gluttonous or grand, it's humble and rich. You eat tamales stuffed with beans and pumpkin flowers, chili-laced squash roasted maize, and cakes made from amaranth and honey. You drink fermented cactus water from a shared gourd. You pass dishes to children. You laugh when someone drops a tomato in their lap. It's not about eating. It's about being fed by the garden, by the community, by the effort it took to bring food from seed to hand. After the meal, people stay. Some nap in the shade, others sing softly. A few paddle around the ceremonial chinampa, trailing their fingers in the water. You sit beneath a willow and close your eyes. You think of your first day here, awkward, unsure, disconnected. You think of the first maize seed you planted, the first time you recognized a weed before it flowered, the first time you tasted something grown entirely by your hands. You think of the soil beneath your fingernails, the sun on your back, the frog beneath the squash leaf, the way Coyote explained the moon's shadow, like it was a story passed down from the maize itself. You think of what you've learned, how to listen, how to wait, how to give, how to receive. As the sun begins its slow descent, the gathering disbands as gently as it formed. Canoes drift apart. Laughter fades. The last reed mats are rolled up and tied with twine. The final bowls are washed in canal water and placed carefully in woven baskets. You paddle home alone, your canoe empty, but your chest impossibly full. Back on your chinampa, the light is golden. The garden rustles in the wind, and you swear the maize stalks lean a little closer to you. You sit on the edge, feet in the water, and whisper something not to anyone in particular. Just a thank you. To the earth, to the roots, to the water, to the time that passed. You lie back, staring at the clouds drifting across the twilight sky. And you understand this isn't the end of the season. It's the turning of the spiral. You wake before the birds. The light hasn't touched the sky yet, but the chinampa stirs. You can feel it in your bones. The soil is warmer this morning, holding in the memory of yesterday's heat. The canal is quieter, the water still is obsidian. There's a slowness in the air, not laziness, but a kind of thoughtful breath the land takes before it begins to exhale again. Today the harvest shifts, not in volume, not in urgency, but in spirit. This is no longer about sustenance, it's about offering. Malinali meets you at the edge of your garden with a bundle of woven reeds and a clay bowl painted with glyphs you've only half learned to read. Inside are 3 items, a single red bean and ear of maize, with half its kernels missing and a small black stone. You don't need to ask what they're for. Today is the offering of the ancestors, not just the people who lived before you, but the plants, the soil, the water, the very cycles that have fed everyone before you ever arrived. Malinali doesn't speak as she leads you by canoe to a small shaded chinampa deep within the canal maze. It's older than the others, untouched by tools for weeks. Its trees are wild, its soil soft and overgrown, and its water murky with silt. It smells like earth that's been left alone just long enough to remember its own name. This place, she says softly, belongs to those who are no longer with us. You step carefully from the canoe. The reeds underfoot are thick and damp, like stepping on woven memory. At the centre of the chinampa stands a low stone platform overgrown with moss and rimmed with wild marigolds. You sit across from Malinali in silence. Together you light a small bowl of copal resin, the sweet smoke curling into the sky. One by one you each place your offerings on the platform. She places a flower from her grandmother's garden. You place your red bean. Speak, she says. So you do. Not loud. Just enough for the wind to carry it. You say thank you. For the soil. For the sun. For the plants that gave everything. For the water that has held you. For the time that taught you how to be still. Then you listen. You don't expect a reply. But you feel one anyway. A sudden breeze across your shoulder. a frog croaking nearby twice in quick succession, a leaf falling in just the right direction. The garden somehow is always listening. Later you paddle back through winding canals. The chinampas you pass are preparing for the changing days, a period of several weeks between the end of the harvest and the beginning of new planting. It's a sacred space in the Aztec calendar, known for transition, cleaning, resetting. You see people scrubbing their tools with ash and water. Others are burning old reed mats. Some farmers let their chinampas rest entirely, allowing nature to take over for a while. You follow suit. Back at your garden, you begin the process of letting go. You pull the last of the bean vines, careful not to disturb the roots. You harvest the remaining squash and let the vines curl into themselves. You clip the maize stalks low, bundling them for drying. But you leave a few standing. Always leave a few, Coyotl once told you. The land remembers generosity. As you work, you think about the early days, the sore muscles, the doubt, the confusion, and how that slowly gave way to rhythm and then to understanding. The chinampa never changed to meet you. You changed to meet it. You clean your tools, meticulously rubbing them with salt and oil, binding their handles with new cord. You stack the clay bowls upside down near the ahuejote. You fold the reed mat. You sweep the walking paths with a bundle of dried corn stalks, the sound of it soft and rhythmic. Then you sit. You sit for a long time, watching, not planning, not working, just sitting. You begin to notice small things. The way the morning light filters through the maize like golden mist. The sudden flash of silver as a fish surfaces in the canal. The slow dance of a dragonfly over your squash patch. You realise that these are the gifts you almost missed while worrying about how much water the beans needed or whether your compost was too wet. The garden is giving you more now at the end than it ever did in the beginning. You spend the afternoon preparing seeds, not just for storage but for sharing. You fill reed baskets with dried maize kernels, chili seeds, amaranth and squash. Each one is labelled with a mark scratched in charcoal on a piece of bark. You paddle to nearby chinampas and deliver them gifts for next season. No expectation, no exchange. A child offers you a painted gourd in return. You accept it with a smile. Back home you tie your own seed bundle with care. You press it into a hollow in the soil at the foot of the tallest maize stalk and cover it with a smooth stone. It will wait, you whisper. By sunset, the sky is streaked with violet and soft amber. You sit at the water's edge, feet dangling just above the surface. You've harvested, given thanks, shared what you could, and left behind what must stay. And now it's time to be still. Coyotl joins you with a bowl of fermented maize drink. You clink clay against clay and sip. It's sour and thick grounding. You've learned the last lesson, he says. What's that? He gestures to the quiet chinampa around you. That the garden grows more than food. You nod. You know it now. It grows patience, presence, gratitude. And most of all, it grows the wisdom to know when to stop digging and start listening. You lie back, staring at the darkening sky. The stars blink into view one by one, reflected in the canal like seeds planted in the heavens. You close your eyes and breathe. The morning mist drapes itself gently over the canals, silvering the world and softening every edge. The water is still hushed, reflective, like the lake itself is holding its breath. You open your eyes to the quiet and sit up slowly, your reed mat creaking beneath you. This is your last morning on the chinampa. It's hard to say goodbye to something that never spoke but taught you more than most people ever could. You breathe deeply. The air smells of wet willow duckweed and fresh soil. Familiar now. Intimate. The scent of a world that once felt strange but now feels like a second skin. You don't rush. Your fingers move slowly as you fold your mat pack, your gourd of seeds, roll the codex you've been writing in, and tie up the last bundles of dried maize husks and amaranth leaves. You touch every item twice once for function, once for memory. Each object is saturated with experience. Every thread in your pack carries days of dirt, days of growth. Malinali arrives as the sun begins to peek through the treetops. Her canoe is empty. She's come not to help you pack, but to walk with you one final time. She says nothing as you both move along the paths of your floating garden. Together you pass each plot. Corn beans, squash, herbs. You stop at the willow you planted at the corner, now no taller than your shoulder but firmly rooted. She places her hand on the bark and nods. You did well, she says. The chinampa remembers. You ask her what that means. How can the earth remember? She smiles. It remembers how you walked, where you knelt, where you fed it, where you were quiet. It remembers everything you gave it and everything you didn't. You continue walking. At the water's edge, Coyotl waits. He stands beside a narrow canoe. It's been cleaned, freshly patched with tar. A paddle rests across the seats wrapped in a bundle of cloth. He carries a small clay bowl in one hand and something cradled in the other. He walks to your garden centre and kneels. He digs a shallow hole near the largest squash mound where you once buried fish bones, where the soil always smelled the richest. Into it he places a single obsidian shard, a feather, a kernel of maize, and a spoonful of lake silt. Then he covers it gently and presses both hands flat against the earth. A memory, he says, for when you return, or for whoever comes after. You kneel too, placing your palm beside his. The soil is warm. The garden exhales. Afterward you sit with Coyotl and Malineli beneath the awehote tree one last time. You share roasted amaranth hot maize bread wrapped in leaves and a drink of fermented cacao. You laugh quietly. You say little, because what is there to say? What can words add to what your hands already wrote into the roots? At midday the sun breaks fully through the clouds. It shines down on the chinampa, and you see it not as a project or a place or a challenge, but as a part of you. You're not leaving it behind, you are carrying it forward. You stand. Your bag is light, just enough for what matters: the codex, the gourd of soil, the seeds, the paddle Coyotl carved. You've left behind tools, extra clothes, even the painted bowl from Tlatelolco. You take only what is memory. Malinali helps you into the canoe. Coyotl places a clay bowl filled with fresh water from your canal at your feet. In case the next place doesn't know you yet, he says, let this remind it where you've come from. You grip the paddle, push off gently. The canoe glides away from the chinampa, slow and smooth, like a breath being exhaled. You do not look back right away. You focus on the water, the way it parts for you, the way the ducks swim beside you as escorts, the way the frogs begin to sing again. Finally you turn, and there it is, your chinampa. No longer just a garden, a teacher, a companion. The maize stands tall, proud. The willow waves slightly in the wind. The soil looks dark and soft, as if it has just been fed. It doesn't need you anymore. And that strangely is the most generous parting gift. You paddle slowly through the familiar canals. Each bend carries a memory. There's the spot where you first fell trying to balance a load of lake sediment. The bank where you learned to spot heron footprints. The place where the moonlight once turned the water to silver and you sat for hours watching the stars. You pass by the community gathering chinampa. It's empty now, save for a bowl of cempasúchil left at the altar and a reed mat still rolled at its edge. You pause, let your fingers trail in the water, and offer one last whispered thanks to the ancestors, to the frogs, to the lake. The canals open wider. The chinampas grow further apart. The buildings of the city peak in the distance, Tenochtitlan's towers rising from water and stone. You do not head there. You follow a smaller channel, one that leads out away from the centre, toward newer land, toward places that might not know about floating gardens or moon planting or duckweed fertiliser, but might need to learn. You think about the seeds in your pouch. They're not just maize and amaranth. They're memory of a way to live, of a way to listen, of a way to stay connected to land even when the land is water. As you paddle forward, you promise yourself this: you will plant again. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next moon, but one day you'll dig your hands into a new patch of soil. You'll offer the old soil into it as a beginning. You'll teach what the chinampa taught you, and you'll listen just as the chinampa listened. The water ripples behind you, the paddle slips forward, and the spiral continues. The day begins like a memory being retold. Gentle, slow, filled with pauses where words are no longer necessary. You wake before the sky shifts from deep blue to morning amber, before the frogs grow silent, before the ducks start their chattering patrol of the canals. You lie still watching the willow leaves stir overhead, listening to the breath of the chinampa beneath you. Today is your final day. Your bag is already packed. The codex lies folded and tucked beneath a clean cloth. The pouch of seeds is tied with maguey fibre. The gourd of soil rests carefully within a bed of reed shavings to keep it safe. And next to it, all wrapped in dark cotton, is the paddle. Coyotl carved its wooden edge, still etched with the spiral mark, the symbol of the path that winds inward before spiraling back out. You've said your goodbyes. You've walked every inch of the chinampa. You've knelt beside every stalk of maize, rested your hands in the compost trench you built with your own back. You've touched the willow you planted, the one that now holds a soft bend, its roots gripping the muddy bank like it knows what it means to belong. But still your heart isn't finished. So you walk once more, not to inspect, not to work, but to remember. You trace the old paths of your first planting days. You pause beside the patch where the beans first sprouted unexpectedly quick. You pass the compost pile that once smelled terrible, but later became the reason your tomatoes turned sweet. You find the corner where the waterlogged squash collapsed in the rainstorm, and how you buried it quietly, turning failure into food for the next. You smile at the crooked reed trellis you tied wrong and never fixed. You laugh softly at the place where a duck once sat in your seed bowl, triumphant and oblivious. The chinampa has always given you more than just food. It gave you rhythm, a way of understanding the world that has no need for speed but every need for attention. Malinali arrives not long after sunrise. She doesn't come with tools. She brings only a gourd of pulka, reed mat, and a small leather-wrapped pouch. Together you sit beneath the tallest ahuejote. Its roots, now deeply embedded in the soil, mark how far time has travelled. You share the drink, sour, sweet, alive. This land will miss your footsteps, she says. You nod, and I will miss the land. She unties the pouch and reveals its contents, a circle of black volcanic stone polished and flat like a mirror. A tezcaquitla, a stone for looking at things, not with your eyes, but with your spirit. She holds it toward you. You carry this now, she says. To remember how to see, you take it in both hands. It's cool, heavier than it looks. It holds no reflection of your face, only sky. Coyotl joins you just before midday. His canoe is tied to the shore, his paddle resting against the side. He carries no speeches, no ceremony, just a small bowl of soil. The same soil you carried into this garden when you first arrived. He places it beside your pack and adds something new, a small wooden carving of a frog, roughly shaped but clearly made with care. For luck, he says. They remember how to survive storms. You thank him, not with words, but with an embrace. His arms are lean strong. He smells of sweat and lake water. The scent of someone who has never tried to escape the land, only understand it. Then it's time. The sun is high, the shadows short. The air is full of dragonflies. The canals shimmer under the heat. Everything around you is alive, patient, accepting. You step into the canoe slowly. The gourd of soil is nestled in front of you. The codex beside it. Your paddle rests across your knees. You push away from the dock. The chinampa doesn't say goodbye. It doesn't wave or call after you, but it does hold still just long enough for you to look back. And you do. You look back once. Just once. The garden is quiet. The stalks of maize tilt gently in the breeze. The ahuejote sways. The water reflects everything without judgment. You see it all, and in it you see yourself transformed. Then you turn forward and paddle. You move down the canals, past the familiar curves and bends, past the ceremonial platform, past the old woman's chinampa where marigolds grow tall and the bees never stop humming, past the neighbour's floating compost mound where ducks now nest. You paddle until the chinampas thin out, until the canal narrows, until the water itself begins to change, and then finally you reach the edge. where the tended garden ends and the wild begins. It's not a perfect site. There are no reed fences, no dug beds, no carved paths. Just a clearing by the water, overgrown and waiting. Trees bend overhead. The soil is lumpy and uneven. The water is thick with algae. But you know it. This is what a beginning looks like. You step onto land, kneel, and plant the first scoop of soil from your gourd, the soil of your chinampa, the memory, the rhythm, the whisper of your hands. You press it in gently, let it settle. You do not rush. Instead, you take out your codex and turn to a blank page. You write day 1 new soil, still quiet, no frogs yet, but the wind feels familiar. We'll plant nothing today, only listen. You tuck the codex away and begin gathering reeds, not to build yet, but to observe. You check the curve of the light, the direction of runoff, the shape of the current. You're not here to conquer, you're here to learn again, to start small, to move with the land, to listen. That night, you lay your mat beside the canal. The stars blink overhead brighter now. The frogs haven't come yet. But you leave a small bowl of water at the edge just in case. You close your eyes. The chinampa is behind you. The next is ahead. And inside you, the spiral continues. The first light of dawn comes slowly, a soft gradient rising from the edge of the water like a breath drawn in. You wake with it, not startled, not groggy, but gradually, as if your body knows that something important is about to begin. Around you, the land is silent. Not the silence of emptiness, but of anticipation. A stillness that feels thick and meaningful, like the world is pausing to witness your first act in this new place. You sit up on your reed mat. The cool earth presses against your legs, grounding you immediately. There is dew in the air and it clings to your shawl, to your arms, to the leaves nearby. Everything glistens in the half-light. You take a breath. Today, you begin to plant. But first, you walk. The path you traced with your feet yesterday is still fresh. No one else has touched it. No animals have disturbed it. You follow it again, walking slowly the way you were taught. You pass the compost trench you began building, already layered with yesterday's cuttings. You touch the reeds you left to dry, lifting one and bending it slightly. Still flexible, not ready yet. You approach the raised bed you shaped the day before, where the soil is dark and warm beneath a light cover of duckweed mulch. You crouch beside it and lay your palm on the centre, where you pressed in your first maize seed. Nothing's visible yet, but something is happening below. You can feel it. You rise and begin gathering your planting pouch. Inside, carefully selected seeds saved from your chinampa maize beans, squash amaranth chili, each one a memory, each one a story. You do not begin with haste. Instead, you return to the rituals that have shaped you. You choose the east corner of the bed where the morning light touches first. You press your fingers into the soil, making a small hole, and place 3 maize kernels inside. You cover them gently, patting the soil softly like placing a child to sleep. You move to the southwest edge where the shade will come in early afternoon. You plant squash here, not deep, just enough. You remember Malinali's lesson, let it feel the sun before the soil. Between these mounds, you press in a line of bean seeds spaced by thumb lengths, meant to climb the maize stalks when they rise. You pause with each one, not because it's required, but because it feels right. Every act of planting here is a continuation of a conversation you started long ago, and the land listens. You finish your work just before midday. You wipe your hands on your tunic, then pour a bowl of water from your gourd and use it to dampen the soil around the seeds. Not too much, just enough to signal your care. After lunch, simple maize flatbread and boiled greens, you return to your codex. You sit beneath a willow tree and begin to write, slowly, carefully filling a full page for the first time since your arrival. Day 4. First full planting. Maize in east, squash southwest, beans between, soil soft held water well. Birds flew overhead but did not land. Saw small red insects near compost trench. Could be helpful, must watch. No rain today, but air is thick. First time I felt the land say yes. You add a drawing beneath the words a spiral at the centre of a 3-leaf stem. It's not traditional, it's not accurate, but it feels true. In the afternoon you begin building the first shade structure. You lash reeds together, crossing them like fingers, and plant the frame near the edge of the plot. It casts a small triangular shadow just enough to protect the new shoots when they come. You're not trying to dominate the land, you're collaborating. By evening your body's tired, not exhausted but worked. You lie on your mat again this time, facing the sky, letting the stars come into view one by one. You name them differently tonight, not by myth, but by memory. There's the maize star brightest in the east. There's the amaranth line faint and low, and the water eye hanging directly over the canal where you filled your gourd earlier. You don't need to map them, you just let them guide you. The frogs return at dusk. Their song is familiar now, a reminder that even in a new place some things remain. You hear them from both ends of the canal layers of croaking like heartbeat and breath. Then comes the moment that stays with you. As you close your eyes, you hear something moving in the soil beside you. You sit up. A small green shoot, just one, pushing its way through the surface of the bed you planted this morning. You blink, thinking it's your eyes adjusting to the moonlight, but it's real. A bean sprout, already answering. You kneel beside it, not touching, just watching. And in that tiny green curve of life, you see everything you hoped for. All the waiting, all the mistakes, all the patience, all the questions you asked the land back on the chinampa, all the days you worked in silence, unsure if you were doing any of it right. The land is answering now, in green, in silence, in trust. You return to your mat, heart full and still. You add one last line to your codex before sleep first sprout, before I asked. And then you close the book and sleep under stars that feel now entirely your own. You wake before the sun. The air is thick with morning mist, the kind that blurs the edges of trees and softens the world. Everything feels hushed, like the land itself is holding its breath. You lie still for a moment, listening not just for sound, but for presence. And it's there, in the distant croak of a single frog, in the tiny ripple that breaks the glass surface of the canal, in the whisper of a reed bending just enough to touch the water. This is the rhythm of the place, no longer unfamiliar. It moves with you now. You rise slowly from your mat. The soil beneath your feet is cool, but no longer startling. It welcomes your weight like an old friend. You stretch, roll your shoulders, breathe deep. The scent of the earth fills your chest, wet stone, rotting reeds, the faint sweetness of yesterday's flowers. Your first stop is always the garden bed. The maize has sprouted, not tall, not yet, but it's there. Small green shoots pushing through the dark earth, their leaves curled like questions waiting to unfold. You crouch beside the nearest one and touch the soil just around it. Still damp, still warm. You smile, not because it surprises you, but because it feels like a quiet conversation finally continuing. The beans have grown too. Their vines reach not randomly, but with purpose. You guide them gently toward the thin reed poles you placed last week. Their tendrils grip without hesitation. Then you see it. The amaranth has broken through. You didn't expect it yet. Its seeds are so small you thought maybe the birds had taken them, but here it is, just a tiny line of red, barely a thread, bending toward the morning light. You sit beside it, say nothing, and you stay there for a long time. Later you tend to the compost trench. It's warm to the touch now. The layers you laid with care kitchen scraps, crushed duckweed lake, sediment reed cuttings have begun to merge. It smells alive, not clean, not dirty, just rich. You add new offerings, bean shells, old flower heads, some leaves that fell overnight. You mix it with your hands, not a tool. You want to feel what's happening, the heat at the centre, the weight, the change. You clean your hands in the canal, let the water run across your fingers, then drink from the gourd you left to chill beneath the shade of a willow. The water is cool, sharp. It wakes you in a different way than light or food ever could. In the late morning, a canoe drifts by from the south. A young woman you haven't seen before. She paddles slowly, her eyes scanning the banks. She smiles when she sees you and raises a small bundle. "Gift?" she asks, holding it out. You wade into the water to meet her. The bundle is wrapped in woven reed tied with Maggie thread. Inside dried cempasúchil petals, a handful of chili seeds, and a small piece of obsidian polished into the shape of a crescent. "For your planting," she says, "to bring light." You thank her softly, sincerely. She asks nothing in return, only nods and continues paddling away. You hold the bundle for a moment, then walk to your garden. You bury the obsidian shard at the base of the tallest maize shoot. You scatter the petals around the amaranth sprout, and you place the chili seeds into a cloth pouch, whispering soon. The afternoon is hot, too hot for heavy work, so you rest beneath the shade of your owejote, the tree that now casts a wide shadow across the edge of your plot. You lean your back against its rough trunk and open your codex. You run your fingers along yesterday's notes, then begin again. Day 6, amaranth sprouted, maize standing strong. Bean vines reached the poles without guidance. Visitor brought gift seed, stone and sun petals. No labour today, just tending, just receiving. You draw a small sun beside the note rays, curling outward like vines. You nap for a time. The dream is gentle. A sky made of water. Seeds falling like stars. Frog songs looping into lullabies. When you wake, the light is softer. The wind has changed direction. Cooler now from the north. You gather more reeds, tightening the frame for a shade shelter above the newest sprouts. You hum as you work, not from habit, but from comfort. From the pleasure of being busy without urgency. As evening falls, you prepare a meal: roasted squash, boiled amaranth leaves, a single maize cake. You eat slowly, letting your tongue remember the labour behind each bite. Later, as the sky turns violet, you light a small fire. The smoke curls upward in thin spirals. You toss in a pinch of dried petals. The scent is faint but sweet. Not for ritual, just for warmth. You open your codex one last time and write evening note. The sprouts did not ask for anything today. They just rose. I think I understand that now. You close the book, stoke the fire one last time, then lie down on your mat. Above you the stars return. The frogs begin their song again. The wind drapes itself across your shoulders like a soft shawl. And in your chest a warmth rises, not from the fire, but from knowing you have not arrived. You have only begun. You wake before the sky turns gold. The world is a soft blue-grey, the in-between colour that belongs neither to night nor to morning. A mist drapes over the canal, spilling through the reeds like smoke from a low fire. The ground beneath your mat is still cool, still damp, and yet something in the air feels different today. Not heavier, not louder, just fuller. As if the land like you has begun to exhale. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms above your head, your palms reaching for the highest leaves of the ahuejote. Your muscles protest, not sharply, not painfully, just enough to remind you that this life is lived with your whole body. Hands that dig, feet that walk, shoulders that carry, skin that listens. You rise without speaking, gathering your shawl around you and begin your morning walk. The maize is taller today. You'd swear it wasn't this high yesterday. But here it stands, reaching just past your knees, its leaves starting to angle outward like arms in a morning stretch. The bean vines have twirled higher up their poles, gripping with confidence, and the amaranth, so delicate just days ago now, shows the first hints of colour in its tiny stems. The spiral chili bed is still silent, the seeds tucked beneath layers of soil and memory. But the ground above is warm. You press your hand flat over it and feel the sun from yesterday, still held close like a secret. You walk to the compost trench and kneel beside it. The The smell is strong today, sharp, wet, complex. A good sign. You stir it gently with your digging stick, watching steam rise from the centre. You add a handful of crushed maize husks and some waterweed gathered from the canal's edge. Then you sit back and watch the pile for a while. This is work too. Watching, noting, letting the land speak first. You take out your codex and begin writing. Day 8 maize reaching second knuckle. Amaranth showing red. Spiral bed quiet but soil warm. Compost steaming at core, adding waterweed improved heat. No birds today, but frogs louder than usual. The wind shifted north in early light. Dry thin, you pause. Then add, I think the garden is remembering me now. Not as visitor, but as rhythm. You close the codex and paddle for a while. The canal is peaceful. The breeze ripples gently across the surface and dragonflies skim low their wings, catching the light like threads of silver. You paddle past the place where yesterday's marigold was offered to the water. It's gone now, perhaps floated further than you can follow, or perhaps received. You bring back water lilies from the edge of a quiet pool, their stems long and tangled. Back at the garden, you lay them out to dry. These will be for mulch, and perhaps for compost. But for now, they dry slowly in the sun, their petals curling inward like sleeping birds. At midday, the wind rises. You stop all work and sit in the shade, letting it move around you. It carries scents, wet clay, blooming flowers from beyond your garden, the faint bitterness of distant smoke. It reminds you of market days back in the city, when the wind would bring smells of hot maize cakes and firewood long before you reach the stalls. You eat a simple lunch, dried beans and roasted squash, wrapped in reed leaf, with a drink of cool canal water filtered through cloth and stone. Then you rest. You lie beneath the willow eyes, closed ears open, listening to the rustle above, to the wings of something large passing overhead, to the occasional splash near the canal's edge, and you dream without sleeping. You see your old chinampa not as a memory but as a seed, floating here, growing, its patterns rising from the soil in this place, its maize whispering to your maize, its frogs singing in chorus with these. A bridge of rhythm stretching between two spaces, 2 times, 2 versions of you. When you rise again, the light is turning amber. You water the spiral bed with care. You check the poles around the beans and add one more for support. You mark the strongest maize stalk with a stone so you can watch its progress more closely. These are the small actions that don't feel urgent but shape everything. Before the sun sets, you write again. Evening note. No planting today. No building. Just presence. The land feels more awake than I do. I moved slowly, and it still gave. Then after a long pause, you add one more line. I think I've stopped needing to prove anything. You close the codex and sit by the water until the stars appear. First 1, then 12, then more than you can count. You lie back on your mat, your body heavy, your breath slow. And as the frogs begin their evening song louder, now more confident, you feel it in your chest. You are no longer growing a garden. You are growing a way of being. The morning arrives soft and golden. You wake to warmth on your face, the scent of sunlit soil and the slow rustle of maize leaves swaying in the breeze. The mist that hovered yesterday has gone replaced by clarity. Every shape seems sharper, every sound crisper. It's as if the land itself has taken a breath, and now so have you. You rise slowly, standing barefoot at the edge of the canal, watching dragonflies hover like sparks above the water. The air hums gently, not with noise, but with presence. You feel it in the soles of your feet, the centre of your chest, the tips of your fingers. It's been nearly 3 weeks since you arrived here, and in that time you've done something more than settle. You've taken root. The maize now stands thigh high. The bean vines are tangled and vibrant, reaching for every surface they can grip. The amaranth stalks have deepened in colour, their tiny red leaves almost glowing when touched by morning light. Even the chili spiral is waking small green shoots curling out of the soil in slow, deliberate promise. Your spiral bed has begun to fill with stories. Every sprout is an answer to a question you once asked. Every tendril is a continuation of the conversation you began on your first chinampa. Today you are not here to plant, not to weed, not even to tend. Today you are here to witness. You begin your walk at the edge of the water. Your footprints leave shallow impressions on the path, quickly darkening as the sun lifts higher. You pass the compost trench, which now smells less like rot and more like memory, earthy, deep, full of the warmth of everything broken down and reassembled. You touch the rim of the trench, thank it quietly, and move on. You pass the bean poles, some now bending slightly under the weight of new pods. You count 7, enough to share. The birds have returned. 2 of them circle above their wings, flashing silver as they glide low and perch on the reed pole you raised as a welcome. One calls once, then twice, then flies on. You smile. A reply. You sit beneath the willow tree and open your codex one last time, not to write a report, but a reflection. Day 20. The land no longer asks who I am. It knows. I have fed it. I have listened. I have given more than I expected, and I have received more than I deserved. I do not own this place. I never will. But I belong to it. You pause. You press a fresh amaranth leaf into the page and fold the codex closed. That afternoon you prepare gifts, not for departure, but for continuity. You collect small bundles of seeds, maize beans, amaranth, and wrap them in dry leaves, tying them with fibre. You place them in a clay bowl at the edge of your plot under the shade of the willow. Not buried, not hidden, just waiting for the next. The wind is stronger in the afternoon. It rattles the leaves, dances across the canal, lifts the ends of your shawl as you kneel to adjust the chili spiral's edge. You laugh at how it plays with your tools, how it tosses your hair. The land feels alive, fully awake now, not just growing, but reaching. By evening, the sky is streaked with orange and violet. You make a final meal, a stew of fresh beans and squash seasoned with salt and ground chili. You eat with your hands, tearing small pieces of flatbread from a bundle and dipping them slowly. You eat beneath the open sky, your back against the tree, your feet in the soil. And then for the first time in many days, you do nothing. You simply sit. You do not take notes. You do not turn soil. You do not plant. You just are, and that is enough. You watch the stars emerge. You listen to the frogs. You feel your heartbeat slow. You're no longer thinking about leaving, because now you understand the garden continues even when your hands are no longer here. The soil remembers. The seeds carry your story. The path you carved with your steps will guide someone else. And as you lie back on the mat one last time, the moon overhead, the water whispering against the bank, you feel it fully. You are not here to master the chinampa. You are here to be changed by it, and so you have been. End of story. Sweet dreams.